Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Sodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyashta kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to say a few words about Krishna. And it's nice to be back here after several years of deadly disease. So we are on 10th canto, chapter 46, text number 6. We'll sing Mangalacharana first. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamo Bhagate Dhanamagyanadibhisah Kalau Nashtadrishamesha Puranarko Dhunoditah. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 46. And today we're on text number 6. Dharyanti Adikritslena Prayah Pranan Kathanchana Pratyagamana Sandeshair Ballavya Me Madatmikaha Dharyantyadikritslena Prayah Pranan Kathanchana Pratyagamana Sandeshair Ballavyo Me Madatmikaha Dharyantyadikritslena Prayah Pranan Kathanchana Pratyagamana Sandeshair Ballavyo Me Madatmikaha Dharyantyadikritslena Prayah Pranan Kathanchana Pratyagamana Sandeshair Ballavyo Me Madatmikaha. यो मे मदात्मिका प्राणान् कथञ्चन प्रत्यागमनसन्देशैर् मदात्मिकाः धारयन्त्यतिकृत्स्नेन प्रायप्राणान् कथञ्चन प्रत्यागमनसन्देशैर् बल्लव्यो मे मदात्मिकाः धारयन्त्यतिकृत्स्नेन प्रायप्राणान् कथञ्चन प्रत्यागमनसन्देशैर् बल्लव्यो मे मदात्मिकाः धारयन्ति, they hold on, atikritchlena, with great difficulty, prayah, barely, pranan, to their lives, katanjana, somehow, prati agamana, of return, sandeshaihi, by the promises, balavyaha, the cowherd women, me, my, mad atmikaha, who are fully dedicated to me. Simply because I have promised to return to them, my fully devoted cowherd girlfriends struggle to maintain their lives somehow or other. Please repeat. Simply because I've promised to return to them, my fully devoted cowherd girlfriends struggle to maintain their lives somehow or other. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, although the gopis of Vrindavan were apparently married, their husbands actually had no contact whatsoever with their supremely attractive qualities of form, taste, fragrance, sound, touch, and so on. Rather, their husbands merely presumed, "These are our wives." In other words, by Lord Krishna's spiritual potency, the gopis existed entirely for his pleasure, and Krishna loved them in a mood of a paramour. In fact, the gopis were manifestations of Krishna's internal nature, his supreme pleasure potency, and on the spiritual platform they attracted the Lord by their pure love. Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, Lord Krishna's parents in Vrindavan, had also attained a most exalted state of love for Krishna, and they too could barely maintain their lives in his absence. Thus, Uddhava would also give special attention to them. Om Ajnanatimarantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukham Kurti Vachalam Pangam Langhayati Girim Yatkrapatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinitaranam. This is not a topic that I'm fit to speak about, but we can at least try to share what some of our acharyas have said about this most deep part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sridhar Swami says, Gokulan nirgamana samaye shigram agamishyami iti ye pratyagama sandeshaistehi me madhyaha ballavyo madatmika iti tasam atma yadi swadehe syat tarhi virhatapena dahyetaiva tasya mai vartamanatvat kathanchit jivaniti bhava. So the idea here is that they're just somehow maintaining their life airs within their bodies. But and that too only because at the time of leaving Gokula, Krishna promised, I'll come back quickly. Here he notes that the word may in this verse means Madhya, mine. Balavya means the gopis. In other words, it's Madatmika, for those for whom I am their very life. Jiva Goswami has given us extensive commentary here. He says, Krishna feared they would give up their lives. Thus he says that they maintain their lives with difficulty. Though their life heirs began to leave, they pull them back. How much longer will they be able to maintain their lives? With what effort do they maintain their lives? Somehow or other they do it. Not mentioning the reason they maintain their lives, because of shame at his own wavering words, he then shows clearly the reason, since there is no alternative. I think this is Bhanu Swami's translation. He had sent many messages saying he would return. They began to meditate on the day of Krishna speaking my return when I first mentioned it. Then they fainted on thinking that I would be delayed. Then they remembered my promise. And they're naturally aroused from their fainting. They maintain their lives with efforts by repeatedly meditating, fainting, and then remembering that I'll return again. They're my cowherd wives, Balavya. This is like they're not only my wives by conventional contact, they're part of me. They're Shaktis arising from my Sarup. It was already said that they are absorbed in me. Manmanaska. The gopis' position is made clear in the Brahma Samhita. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhis ityadi. These gopis think that they're married to other men only by the influence of the Leela Shakti in order to show their unrestricted attraction for Krishna alone. It's only in appearance that they seem to sleep with those men. This is clear in the following statement from Srimad Bhagavatam. Nasuyan khalu krishnaya mohitastasya mayaya manyamanaha swaparshvasthan swan swan daran vrajaukasaha. That's chapter 33, text 37 of this canto. The cowherd men, bewildered by Krishna's illusory potency, thought their wives had remained at home by their sides. Thus they didn't harbor any jealous feelings against him. They can never give up hope in me, Krishna says, since they never lose faith in my words, out of prema, filled with the feeling that they belong to me. But this is a general statement. It is possible that some of them cannot maintain their lives, but they will be pacified by messages saying that I will return. All the people of Vraj should be pacified since they take me as their life. And then he quotes from the 14th chapter of this canto, text 35, O my Lord, what can you give to the people of Vraj, whose houses, possessions, friends, dear ones, bodies, sons, life, heirs, and hearts are dedicated only to you? Since there's nothing superior to you or Vraja, which you've already given. Thinking of this in my mind becomes bewildered. You awarded yourself even to Putana and her family members because she wore the disguise of a nurse. How greatly fortunate, this is text 32 of chapter 14 of this canto. How greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd men, and all the other inhabitants of Rajabhumi. There's no limit to their good fortune because Krishna gave them prema, which is the highest bliss, eternal and complete. Then he quotes from chapter 26, text 13, same canto. Dear Nanda, how is it that we and all the other residents of Vraja cannot give up our constant affection for your son? And how is it that he is so spontaneously attracted to us? Even the animals and trees experienced grief when Krishna entered Kaliya's lake and experienced joy when he came out. When Indra showered rain on Vraja, Krishna thought, I must protect the cowherd community by my natural powers, for I am their shelter, protector, and indeed I'm everything to them. I've taken a vow to protect my devotees. That's from chapter 25, text 18. Same canto. Elders, such as Upananda and friends like Sridhama, should be consoled since they are the best devotees, Nanda says. Quote, this is chapter 46, text 18. Does Krishna remember us? Does he remember his mother and his friends and well-wishers? Does he remember the cowherds and their village of Vraja, of which he is the master? Does he remember the cows, Vrindavan forest, and Govardhan hill? The following should be understood about those not mentioned, since only his parents and gopis were mentioned in this verse. Some who were to be consoled are included with Nanda. Others were not consoled because of some reason, but they were peaceful. In Gokula, there are three types of prema. Prema with predominance of longing, that's the parents and the gopis. Prema with predominance of familiarity, that's the friends. And prema without discrimination, that's the cows. That prema, when it becomes intense, even elsewhere produces a direct appearance of Krishna. And then he quotes from Krishna Karnamritam. This is a well-known verse. Agre samgrayati kam api keli lakshmim anyasu dikshwapi vilochanameva sakshi ha hanta hastapata duramaho kimetad asha kishoram ayam amba jagatrayam me. He is directly manifested in front of me, an indescribable wealth of his pastimes. He's in other directions also. My eye is the witness. Oh, what a misfortune. He's out of reach of my hand. Is that him? Ah, for me, the three worlds have become filled with this youth of my aspiration. Jayadev Goswami also similarly says, Slishyati chumbati jaladara kalpam harirupagata iti timiramanalpam natha hare sidati. When she sees the dense darkness that resembles a rain cloud, she embraces and kisses it. Sarit chaila vanodeshan mukunda parabhushitan akridan ikshimananam mano yati tarattam. This is 10th canto, chapter 46, text 22. We're not there yet. When we see the places where Mukunda enjoyed his sporting pastimes, the rivers, hills, forests that he decorated with his feet, our minds become totally absorbed in him. The friends and the cows think that Krishna is actually present when he shows his spurti. That means manifestation. They think the spurti is his direct form since they cannot distinguish the two. Those who are filled with longing, however, cannot trust even this direct presence, what to speak of his showing spurti. Later they have great doubt because of intense longing. This is shown in the queens of Dwarka when they play with Krishna in the water. Therefore, only the gopis and the parents among the inhabitants of Vraja feel separation. Thus, in verse 3, Krishna mentions them only. Iti samsmrityananda krishnaruraktadhi atyutkanto bhavat tushnim prema prasaravihvalaha. Thus intensely remembering Krishna and again, Nanda Maharaj, his mind completely attached to the Lord, felt extreme anxiety and fell silent, overcome by the strength of his love. And in text 9, 3 verses from now, thus speaking, it's chapter 47. Thus speaking, the gopis, whose words, bodies, and minds were fully dedicated to the Lord Govinda, put aside all their regular work now that Krishna's messenger Uddhava had arrived among them. The cows, whose prema was indiscriminate, and the cowherd boys with familiarity remained in Vraja experiencing a meeting with Krishna as spurti. The cows, because of their nature of less intelligence, were convinced that Krishna was actually there. The cowherd boys were firmly convinced that Krishna would come from Mathura to join them. They would talk of this in private. Thus the joy of the cows is described in verse 9. Thus only his parents and the gopis had to be consoled with care. There was no alternative. The cowherd boys would become peaceful without personal consolation. Consoling them would, on the contrary, produce doubt. Thus, among the three types of prema, some were consoled or not consoled. Others in Vraja who follow their bhavas were treated accordingly, as the gopis will say. Quote, perhaps Akrura has returned, he who fulfilled Kamsa's desire by taking lotus-eyed Krishna to Mathura. That's in text 48 of this chapter. The gopis' speech also showing their great sorrow was experienced by others also. Quote, while Krishna's messenger continued speaking with Nanda, the night ended, O king. The women of the cowherd village rose from bed and lighting lamps, worshipped their household deities. Then they began churning the yogurt into butter. This chapter, text 44. This verse shows the gopis' joy, which was also experienced by others. The trees and birds whose samskaras were destroyed by previously seeing and touching Krishna also experienced this joy. When Krishna entered and emerged from Kaliya lake, the trees felt sorrow and joy, what to speak of the animals. Appearance of joy and sorrow arose from time, which had a similar nature, being absorbed in the past times, bestowing favorable or unfavorable situations. Thus, auspicious or inauspicious omens would occur on earth and in the heavens. Some say that the cowherd boys were pacified by sometimes going to Mathura, but this is not true. For Nanda asks later, does Krishna remember the cowherd boys? That was in verse 18. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he comments that Krishna said, with great difficulty the gopis are somehow maintaining their lives because of my promise to return. It would be much easier to simply give up their lives. But then someone may question, how are the gopis maintaining their lives? Krishna answers in this verse. It was by my statement, I will quickly return, end quote, made while leaving Gokula, that the gopis have strong hope that I will return. This is all that's maintaining their life heirs, which are about to leave their bodies. So then someone may ask, what's their relation to you? And this Krishna answers with the word balavyaha, meaning that even though they are women of the cowherd community, still they belong to me. Their husbands actually have no contact whatsoever with their supremely attractive qualities of form, taste, fragrance, sound, and touch. Rather, their husbands merely presume. These are our wives. In order to nourish the taste of rasa, the Vraja gopis have always been, from the very beginning, in a self-sustaining conjugal relation with me as their paramour, parakya bhava. They are to be enjoyed by me alone because they are manifestations of my own form, mad atmika, as incarnations of supreme bliss. They are my own internal energy, Sarup Shakti, appearing as the essence of my pleasure potency, Hladini Shakti. Although I am Atma Ram, I derive more pleasure from them. For this reason, I consider them more deserving of my mercy than even my own self. Another meaning of Madhatmika, these gopis are mine because they are the objects of my enjoyment. Or, the gopis' very selves are absorbed in me, in the sense that they're always hankering to give pleasure to my mind. So this is what our acharyas have taught. It's the highest subject matter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in fact. I'm not qualified to say anything about this, but we have heard from others also. So many places we've heard about the separation of the Vrajavasis from Krishna after he has gone away to Mathura. Here it's mentioned all the Vrajavasis, not just the gopis or his parents, but also the cowherd boys, even the cows. And one poet writes that after Krishna goes away to Mathura, the cows are just returning again and again to the imprints of his footprints in the dust of Vrindavan, and they're smelling his feet and hoping that he will come back. And we've also heard that the manifestation of Krishna, which is produced in the minds of the cowherd boys and others, they were not able to distinguish that from Krishna's direct form, and as a result, sometimes they're not sure whether they're seeing Krishna directly or whether they're seeing only this spurti that is produced of their own recollection. But this is not the case with the parents and the lovers of Krishna, because their love is so intense, and the nature of that love is such that they have to feel his separation. Rupa Goswami has described this separation at length in his Padyavali, and commentaries on Padyavali illuminate that as well, especially the separation felt by Srimati Radharani. The only thing that really keeps them all alive is Krishna's promise that he'll return. Srimati Radharani tries to write a letter to Krishna, but she cannot because her eyes wet the page and all the ink runs away. It's impossible. Or she faints. That's what's being described here. So this is our aspiration. We can understand Krishna consciousness it's an extremist ideology, you can say. These gopis it's unthinkable, this kind of devotion. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has also told us, he's quoting Srimati Radharani, Ashlishyava paradatam pinashtumama darshanat maramhatam kurutuva yatha tatha vaviridhatu lamparto mat prananathastu saeva naparaha. When her friends came and said, look, he's not coming back. Why are you doing this to yourself? This is no way to live, and you can't live like this. Just forget about him. He's a rascal after all. Srimati Radharani agrees. Yeah, he's a rascal, I know. But he's the only Lord of my life. I cannot give him up. This is not well respected in this world. People will see this as a kind of, they'll see Srimati Radharani as a completely abused woman. But this is what our acharyas glorify, and this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu worships, and this is our goal if we're sincerely chanting. So we have to know what we want. But another thing is that it's been described that this ecstasy looks to be pain, and even our acharyas describe it as pain, but actually it's Paramananda. It's the highest ecstasy. That's not something that's conceivable to us, and that's why we have such a problem processing it. It's actually not possible for us to process it intellectually. But our acharyas describe it as pain only because that is greater ecstasy. It's not easy to understand that. Just like sometimes we have words in Sanskrit that just don't work. You say kamanuga bhakti, for example. This is what the gopis are practicing. Bhakti according to their own kama, their own lust. There's no more appropriate word for it than kama. But that very word is the worst word at the same time that we could possibly choose to describe the gopis' so-called lust. Because it's not that at all. And no one can understand this except through practice. This is what Krishna says in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita. If you practice, then you can see everything very clearly. If you don't practice, you can't see anything at all. So, anyway, these are just a few thoughts. today is also the disappearance day of Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis and close disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, he was from South India, Srirangam, and like many of our acharyas were from South India. Maybe even most of the 6 Goswamis, because Rup Sanatan were from South Indian stock, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami was himself from Srirangam. It's said that this, many of them. Anyway, so he was the son of Venkata Bhatta. He was in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, still prominent there. And Mahaprabhu came there during the Chaturmasya and stayed there, and Gopal Bhatta was rendering service to Mahaprabhu and became very attached. And so he became the disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and ultimately came to Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, he was worshipping the Lord, but in the form of Shalagram Shilas, but he was seeing that all the other Goswamis were worshipping deities, and in order to increase his service to the Lord, he wanted to worship the Lord in the deity form, because only with deities you can give clothing and garlands and jewelry, and it's limited what you can do with an aniconic form of the Lord. So he wanted to worship the Lord in the deity form, and he was depressed because he thought, my devotion is lacking. That's why the Lord doesn't appear to me as a deity the way he's appearing to the others. And so then that very night, the Lord came and transformed himself from these Shalagram Shilas into Radharaman. And the Radharaman is famous deity of Vrindavan. He's been worshipped there ever since. So Gopal Bhatta is very well known of the Goswamis. Of all the Goswami temples, practically only Radharaman temple is still operating as it was. The deity never left Vrindavan because he's very small. So he was easy to conceal. Many other deities they had to leave. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami and other Goswamis, it's been described, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipunau Sadharma Samsthapakau Lokanam Hitakarinau Tribhuvane Manyau Sharau. I can't remember, but they have very carefully studied all the Vedic literatures in order to establish what is Sanatana Dharma in this world and in devotional service, how to act in devotional service. This was particularly the responsibility of Sanatana Goswami. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami assisted him in compiling his Hari Bhakti Vilas and Satkriyasar Deepika. So this is famous Vaishnava Smriti given by our Goswamis. All of our deity worship is based on this model. It's interesting, since we're discussing the nature of the gopis' love, their relationships with their family members, and their relationships with Krishna. It's interesting to note here that in this Hari Bhakti Vilas, we actually don't find any mention of Srimati Radharani or any indications as to how to worship Srimati Radharani, which is ironic because we're all worshippers of Radha Krishna. So some can wonder about that. All the vidhis and all the instructions given in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, they all refer to Lakshmi Narayana instead. So that's because in our conditioned state, we understand that we can hardly approach Sri Sri Radha Krishna. Instead, we worship the Lord in the mood of vidhi, vidhivat puja. And we consider that we are worshipping Lakshmi Narayana until we make enough advancement that we can actually begin to conceive of the Raga Bhakti that we've been describing regarding today's verse. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami has given us his Hari Bhakti Vilas, and other Goswamis also given various shastras. In this way, he was worshipping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's understood that Radharaman is also the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's a little bit esoteric understanding. So he was self-manifest deity, like so many of the deities in Vrindavan. And he had some devotees that he was preaching to in a place called Devavandya, which is in northern UP. Now that place is best known as the epicenter of Islamic education, Deoband. And in particularly, Muslims they are training up so many lawyers so that they can basically take over the Supreme Court system in India. But in those days it was a famous place, Devavandya, where the Lord was worshipped, and so many Brahmins were there. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami had disciples from that place, and these disciples have carried out the puja of Sri Radharaman since Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disappearance today, so many hundreds of years ago. So he went to the Gandaki Nadi in Nepal, and he received these Shalagram Shilas, 12 of them. And he used to keep them in a bag around his neck. And the Damodar Shila took the form of Radharaman when the Shalagrams transformed into Radharaman. He used to keep the Shalagrams carefully in a basket hanging from a branch on the tree where he slept. We know the 6 Goswamis, they didn't even care to have a nice house or an apartment or even a jhompuri. They slept under a different tree every night. And so he was leaving his shalagrams in a basket on the branch of the tree. Just like Madan Gopal was worshipped by Sanatan Goswami in the same way at top of Dwadashaditya hill, under a tree only. So then one day after performing his bhajan, he went to sleep, and the next morning when he came to wake up his shalagrams, he opened the basket and he saw a smiling face of Radharaman. Radharaman ki jai. Beautiful threefold bending form. Still, when you see the photographs of Sri Radharaman, devotees will very eagerly point out that you can see the Lord's 2 front teeth, very slightly. And of course his lotus eyes are so distinctive, and his beautiful little feet. And anyway, this is Radharaman. I think the best darshan that you can have of Sri Radharaman is in the winter time at Mangalartik, because in the winter time they completely dress him up with woolen, knitted. He has a knitted bagalbandi, and he's got a knitted cap with a little bow tied, and he's even got little socks and mittens that he wears. And it's too cute. So this is Radharaman's mercy on the world. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami's mercy on all of us, that he had such love that the Lord agreed to appear to him in this form. And he remains still to this day. So we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Gopal Bhatta Goswami, thank him for surrendering to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, thank him for worshipping the Lord so devotedly that Radharaman remains for us to come and see whenever we wish, if Srimati Radharani gives us that mercy. So then, Gopal Bhatta Goswami ki jai. It's time to end according to my clock. 7:15 exactly, and the conch confirms. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam
Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Enam kanvantam aravindanalaya taksham Varhavatam samasitam buddhasundarangam Kandar agom vikamaniya Vishesha shobha
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Angani yasa sakalen Priya priti manti Pasyanti panti kayanti Chiram naganti Ananda chinmaya sadhu Jala vigrahasya Govindam
Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami
भजहु रे मन श्री नंदनंदना अभय चरणारविंद रे भजहु रे मन श्री नंदनंदना अभय चरणारविंद रे दुर्लभ मानव जन्म सत्संगे दुर्लभ मानव जन्म सत्संगे तरहो ए भव सिंधु रे तभय चरणारविंद रे भजहु रे मन श्री नंदनंदना भय चरणारविंद रे शीतयातप बात बरीशन ए दिन जामिनी जागिरे शीतयातप बात बरीशन ए दिन जामिनी जागिरे ए दिन जामिनी जागिरे विफल से विनो कृपान दुर्जना विफल से विनो कृपना दुर्जना चपल सुख लाभ लागिरे अभय चरणारविंद रे भजहु रे मन श्री नंदनंदना भय चरणारविंद रे भजहु रे मन श्री नंदनंदना अभय Charanarvindare. Idhana jobana putra parijana ithe kiya chhe parati tire. Idhana jobana putra parijana ithe kiya chhe parati tire. Kamala dala jalam Jivana talamala. Kamala dala jala Jivana talamala. Bhajahu haripadani tire. Bhajahu haripadani tire. Bhajahu re mana Shri Nanda Nandana bhai Charanarvindare. Bhajahu re manam Shri Nanda Nandana bhaya Charanarvindare. Durlabhamanabam janama sata sange. Durlabhamanabam janama sata sange. Durlabhamanabam janama sata sange. Durlabhamanabam janama sata sange. Taraho e bhava sindhure. Taraho e bhava sindhure. Abhay charanarvindare. Bhajahu re mana Shri Nanda Nandana bhai Charanarvindare. Shravana Kirtana Smarana Vandana Pada Sevana Dasyare. Pujana Sakhi Jana Atma Nivedana. Pujana Sakhi Jana Atma Nivedana. Govinda Dasa Bhilashare. Govinda Dasaya Bhilashare. Bhaja Hure Mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare. Bhaja Hure Manam Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare. Abhay Charanara Vindare. Abhay Charanara Vindare. Gaura Premanande. O minds, just worship the lotus feet of the son of Nanda, which make one fearless. Having obtained this rare human birth, cross over this ocean of worldly existence by associating with saintly persons. Day and night I remain sleepless, suffering heat and cold, wind and rain. For a bit of flickering happiness, I vainly served wicked and miserly men. What real assurance of happiness is there in all one's wealth, youth, sons, and relatives? This life totters like a drop of water on a lotus petal. Therefore you should always worship the lotus feet of Lord Hari. Govinda Das longs to hear the glories of the Lord Hari, chant his glories, constantly remember him, offer him prayers, serve his lotus feet, become his servant, worship him, offer him prayers, serve his lotus feet, become his servant, worship him, his friend, and completely offer him